Okay, welcome to class. We've got some administrative stuff to do today, and I'll preach a little bit today, and then we're going to get in and cover some content today as well. So first is about the course textbook. I think first is about the course textbook. There we go. That's not the course textbook. The course textbook is on, you'll find a link to it on Learning Suite on our schedule. Like the first day of the schedule will be a link to where you can go and get the course textbook. It is a MyEducator book. I guess most of you if you've worked with MyEducator before, just a hand. Here it looks like most of you have done that before, so it should be kind of normal experience for you. When I first started teaching this class in 2001, I have taught this class every semester of my academic career. When I first started teaching it, there was only one collegiate textbook. It was a pretty expensive textbook and it wasn't very good. And then in about 2016, I thought, I got to find a better book. And there was no other in the collegiate market, but I thought, well, maybe I can find one that's just a trade book like this. But I really wanted to work with MyEducator to be able to do automatic grading of the stuff that we're doing in VBA. And so I found the author of this book. So this was last published for Excel 2000, like an old school. And the guy who wrote this is a guy named Matthew Harris. He was a teacher. He taught Introduction to Programming at Berkeley, UC Berkeley. Really respected guy. And his book was out of print. And it took me a little while to track him down, but I tracked him down and I said, hey, wouldn't you like to bring your book up to 2016 standards at the time? He's like, yeah, I'd love to. So I put him together with MyEducator and say, you guys get together and get a book that I can use for this class. And he said, listen, I have only one condition. And that is you can't limit me to 21 chapters. That was the worst thing about writing this book. You know, when the book is called Teach Yourself Excel Programming in 21 Days, you got 21 chapters, that's it. I said, look, I don't care how many chapters you make, knock yourself out. And so when he was done, it was 41 chapters. It's a long book. We're not going to cover all 41 chapters. In fact, when MyEducator, when they said, hey, we're done, ready for you to use the book, they said, this is the biggest book we have at MyEducator. No other book even comes close to how much content there is in this book. It's going to cost more than a normal book. And I said, don't do that. I don't need the whole book. We'll cut half of it out and just use the stuff I need and charge the normal price. And they said, well, okay. And then it was, I guess, too much work to cut out the stuff. So they're charging the normal price and you're getting the whole book. So I guess that's okay. So it really is a pretty good book, but the whole purpose, the whole impetus was so that I could give you instant feedback on your homework and your projects. So when you write your programs in VBA, you're going to say submit. I'll show you how to do that. You'll say submit and it will grade it immediately and it will show you what you got wrong. And you're going to get a chance to look at the feedback and go and improve that. And I will take I think I take the highest score of the first two submissions. We've known from studying this approach is that you actually learn better if I take the average of the first two submissions. But I think there's enough question in what these instructions are actually saying that until you get the feedback, sometimes you're not quite sure exactly what I'm asking for in the assignments. And so I think I'm taking the highest of your first two submissions for the assignments that we do. We'll talk about those as we come along. So any questions on the course textbook? Yes. By the way, sometimes when I'm standing here, the light's right in the eyes. And so if you're raising your hand, I might not see you. Josh, we got to know each other really well this morning, just about 2 minutes ago. But Josh, go ahead. You said the book, there's links to the book in the course website. So on Learning Suite, let's go to Learning Suite. That's not Learning Suite. I got to find Learning Suite. Oh, here it is. So yeah, if we go to the schedule, then there should be purchase course textbook here. So that'll link you over to MyEducator, and then it's like, add in your credit card or whatever. Yeah. Refresh Learning Suite. I published the class just about half hour ago. So just like reload your Learning Suite should be okay. Yeah.
For this class, are there any libraries that are available on a Mac version of Excel that we can use?
Yeah, I'm going to expect that you have the Windows version. A bunch of the things that we do are going to be available only on Windows. So does Microsoft keep the Mac version of Excel just a little bit less capable than the Windows one? They do. Are they doing it? Is it a strategic thing or just like they're not good enough to make it work thing? I think it's a strategic thing, but yeah. So like for introductory stuff, you can do it in either one, but when you get to the advanced stuff, you got to be on the Windows platform. So most of the examples we do in class, you'll be able to follow along on your Mac, but you will need to get to a Windows version of Excel to be able to submit any of the homework. So the assumption in this class, you've got the Windows version. Other questions? It used to be that I could give you a copy of Windows and you could get virtualization software to run it for free on your Mac, and they just don't do that anymore. So if you're looking for a way to run it on Mac, come and see me in my office and we'll see what we can figure out. Other questions? Yeah, what I said halfway through is I might not be able to see you raise your hand. Don't feel shy to just call out, hey, I've got a question, or just ask the question if there's a pause. Yeah. All right. What's next here? My teaching philosophy. I take this from Galileo Galilei. You cannot teach anybody anything. It's like, I love this teaching philosophy. I'm off the hook. You can only help them discover it within themselves, which just sounds delightful. Do I really believe I'm going to help you discover VBA inside yourselves today or this semester? No. But I really do believe that I can't teach it to you. So what's going to happen in this class is that I'm going to show you great things and we'll kind of work together. I'm going to assume that you're kind of working along with me in class. I will record every lecture and then post it so you can go back and review it. I won't live stream it because the university wants you here. And so we'll make the recordings available to you. But you're going to learn this by doing it. So that's kind of really important here. In fact, it reminds me of my third grade class. I don't know, third grade was a long time ago for me. I don't remember much about it, but I remember Mrs. Ransom bringing in an incubator with like fertilized chicken eggs in it, incubating in our class. Did you have this experience? Anyone? So I wasn't the only one. There's a few of us that kind of went through that. And it takes like 3 weeks for a chicken's egg to hatch. And so, like every day, those third graders kind of looking in what's going on, for 3 weeks. And then you can imagine when the first chicks started pecking through the shells, like the whole third grade class was just, so excited. And it was almost pandemonium. And then we realized it takes a long time for a little baby chicken to get through the shell. Like days. They're pecking into the little hole there. They're still like the next day, they're still working at it the next day. What do the little third graders want to do? We wanted to get there and help those poor chicks. They're trapped in that shell. We got to let them out. And Mrs. Ransom told us, you can't help them because they're developing muscles by breaking through that shell. And if they don't develop those muscles, they won't be strong enough to live and they'll die if you help them out of that shell. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but we believed it. And so we didn't help those. The last thing we want to do was kill the chickens. Why am I telling you about chickens hatching in the third grade? Because that process of that little chick coming out of the shell is what you're going to go through in this class. It is a painful class at times because the way you learn this is by the struggle that happens. And so, if every time you have a struggle, you talk to someone else or you talk to the TA and the TA was just to tell you, well, here's how you do it. You'd go, great, I could type that in, and you might practice your typing skills, but you're really not practicing your VBA and your creative skills. And so the struggle is a really important part of this. There's a question in the back or a comment? No, sorry. Okay. And so there will be times that you're frustrated and just realize that's a really important part of this process. Almost every semester, no one's asked me this semester, but almost every semester someone asks, can I audit the class? And I always say, yeah, there's plenty of room in the class. Glad to have you audit. You won't learn anything if you audit the class. And the reason is there are some classes that you can sit in the class and absorb most of the content by being a member of the class. You're in a philosophy class, you're having deep discussions about ontology or epistemology or metaphysics, and that discussion is where the learning happens. Here, I'm going to expose you to stuff here in class, but the learning happens when you go and have to apply the things that you've seen in class to a different context. Without the deadline and without the grade, you won't go through the pain that it takes to do this. So I want you to kind of experience the struggle, but I don't want you to experience the struggle for 20 hours, right? So you're going to want to get help. We got ways for you to get help, and we'll talk about that. But just realize that's going to be a part of this. Have you had classes here at like BYU where like most of the class was like memorization? I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff. You memorize, you can back, how well you get back on tests is how, just raise your hand if you had a class like that. Well, almost half of us here or so. That's not this class at all. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to be solving unstructured problems in this class. What's a structured problem? A structured problem is almost everything you do in accounting. Who's my accounting graduates? See, most of you in the front row. That's really good. I was an accounting major here, and I loved accounting. But in accounting, the way it works is we're going to teach you the rules. Learn these rules, and then we'll give you some information. You apply those rules to the information, and then you get the right answer out. Now, so we don't tell you what the answer looks like. We give you the starting point, we give you the rules, and you give me the answer. That's a structured problem where the process is well defined. An unstructured problem, the process is not well defined. And so I'm going to give you the problem. I'm going to give you the description of what the solution should be like. I might even show you exact picture of what you're supposed to make. And how you get from the start to the end, that's the part that, I haven't taught you that. I've given you some tools, but it's not like I've got the starting point, apply rules, and get the end. Oh no, you've got the starting point, make something up. Think of something you never thought of before. Think of something no one ever told you before, and then get to the ending point. And it's a really different kind of learning than you've probably done in most of the classes in your whole education. How many of you would say that's right? That's a different way of doing stuff than like most of what you've done in academia. Not like three of you. Most of you are like, oh yeah, we do this all the time. I don't know. Okay. So, but I have good news. It's a very creative process, but here's some good news. You ready for the good news? You are all sons and daughters of a creator. And so like this ability to be creative is like part of you. So you may have suppressed it for many years. We're going to help you, hopefully help you find that here in this class. I remember, when I was, do they still administer the Myers-Briggs personality profile? Here, does that sound familiar to you? Yeah, okay. So, I was in the very first class that they did the integrated accounting junior course, which you think of as the accounting core, the junior core. I was the guinea pig year for that. And part of that was they administered, and in fact, that first semester, they actually did even something like maybe it was the next year. I don't think it was the junior core. It was the next year anyway, where they had a whole integrated core for all Marriott students who are master's students. So it said there's a set of classes for one semester that we're going to put MBAs and MOBs and Macs all into kind of the same pool of classes. They administered the Myers-Briggs personality profile, and there's 16 different possible personalities, and we were all over the board. They kind of showed us, and we filled things up pretty well. And then we got into our accounting class, and they said, okay, here's how you guys look. We were three of those 16. We were three. And as I looked at it, I realized, oh wow, everyone is in two except one. That was me. I was like way over here, somewhere else on the map. And one of the big things was how it was like level of creativity, which to me was, I was high on that. And none of my other co-students were. And I remember thinking at that point, maybe I've chosen the wrong major, but I was already in the master's program, right? It's too late to change. Then I realized I was taking my forensic accounting class, and I realized, oh wow, if you get too creative with accounting, you go to jail. That was like the message of that class. So accountants, the stuff we're learning about being creative here, don't apply it too more broadly, to the rest of your studies. But if your career doesn't really allow you to have that creative outlet, as children of a creator, you got to find a way to do something to develop that creativity that you have. Okay, let me take a little minute and talk about life's mission. Here I was, as in the accounting junior core, when I had an epiphany. What's an epiphany? Someone tell me an epiphany. The definition of an epiphany. Go ahead. A sudden realization of great truth, right? And there I was sitting in an accounting class of all places, and I had this epiphany. It's kind of a strange thing to have, but I had the real. So for my whole education up to that point, I didn't ever really think, oh, the reason I'm here is so I can get a job someday. It was like, you just go to school because you go to school. And when it was time to go to college, I went to college. Mostly I wouldn't have to work with my dad. It was okay to work with him, but didn't want to work with him for the rest of my life. So I'd kind of achieved my collegiate goal just by being admitted. And I'm kind of going along, and I got a major in something, and here I am. Then I realized, oh, wow, I'm here learning this stuff because someone's going to pay me a lot more money if I know this stuff. I mean, it was like, it took me till I was a junior in college to realize, oh, that's the point. And I thought, wow, I finally understood it, but I was really only partway there. So it turns out you're going to need education for your career, but that's not the only education you need in life. And I was listening to John Pingree talk in General Conference on the October 2017 conference when it was like, whoa, I think I get it now. Pingree, the title of his talk was, "I Have a Work for Thee." And it comes from Moses, so here Moses is just kind of seeing all the work of God's hands, and kind of has this whole vision. And then afterwards he says, Moses, I've got something for you to do. I mean, there's part of my work that I need you to engage in. And what kind of amazing to think, here's God who can do all this stuff, and yet says, I need your help with something. And what Pingree suggested is that wasn't just limited to Moses, but that's something for everyone, that every single one of us has some mission that God has for us in this world. And we are used to thinking about, what does God want me to do in my calling at church? We are used to thinking about, what does God want me to do in my ministering assignment? But what Pingree was saying was, there's something that God wants you to do, like outside what you normally think of as your church responsibilities. Talked about a friend of his who was a physician, who felt it was like his responsibility from God to use these gifts that he had in healing to be able to serve people who otherwise might not be able to engage it. And so he said, you know what, one day a week, he had some small practice, one day a week, I'm going to run a free clinic. And that was his way to fulfill his divine mission with the talents that God had given him. Now, the reason that this talk hit me so hard is that I had been thinking about this for probably at least a decade already. And so when he's talking about it, I'm going, yeah, this is the stuff I've been thinking about. And part of the problem is I wasn't sure I knew what the mission was that God had for me in life. Well, what is it? What's my divine calling? And I'd been struggling with that. And he said, how many of you, by the way, would say, you know what, I already know what my divine mission is, or at least I have a pretty good feeling about where it is. See, and I wouldn't expect many of you to even thought about this yet. I certainly didn't think about it until I was much older than you are. But I think it's something that's worth thinking about. But what Pingree said was, he said, I'm going to tell you how to find out what your mission is. And I perked up. I was all, whoa, this would be great, because I'm kind of wondering this. And you know what he said? I'm guessing you don't know what he said. Yeah, he said Doctrine and Covenants, section 46. Doctrine and Covenants, section 46 talks about spiritual gifts. And we learned several things about spiritual gifts. First of all, there's a lot of spiritual gifts. Second of all, and how many of you know people who have a lot of spiritual gifts? Yeah, and you think maybe they have them all. No, they don't. We know that. No one gets them all. So we learned that in section 76. But here's the most important thing that we learn in 76, is that everyone gets at least one. Unto every man is given a gift. I don't mean man in a gender specific way. So unto everyone is given a gift. Now here's the question. Why? I'm going to put you on the spot. Why did God give you that gift? At least that one gift you have. Why did God give it to you? Okay, yeah. So it's not just because, oh, hey, I'm feeling so good, I have this gift. Okay, you're going to develop it. And what are you going to do with that gift? Is it to serve? Is it just to make your own life better? Yeah, it's to serve others. And he gave you that gift so that you could fulfill the mission that he's given you. He's given you something to do to make the world a better place, to help your fellow brothers and sisters in Christ to be able to come back on their way, through this world. And so if you're wondering, what is it that God wants you to do? Step one, understand what gifts you have. What is it that you do that comes naturally to you? And that's what your divine, that's your gift, that's your spiritual gift. And it's there to help you fulfill your spiritual mission. So figure out what it is that gift is, and that's going to give you a clue about what direction you should be going to figure out what your divine mission is. The whole point I'm telling you this now is that this is something I wish I had learned much earlier in life. While you are here at university, and you're here in a professional school, right? You are here to get the kind of education that's going to get you a great job. but don't let that be the end of what you're seeking in your education. Take advantage of what resources you have here to say, what else could I learn here at this institution that would help me not get the job I need, but to fulfill the mission that God has for me. So just something to think about. Okay. The robe. How come I'm wearing a robe? I'll tell you why I'm wearing a robe. I first got the robe when I graduated with my doctorate. They said, you're getting ready to graduate. See, you're registered for graduation. You're probably gonna wanna wear a robe. In fact, you gotta wear a robe. You wanna rent it or buy it? And I thought, back to my accounting, this is a rent versus buy decision. Do you have those still? Like part of a regular part of accounting 310 or whatever, anyway. And I thought, well, I'm gonna have to wear the robe. I was going into academia. I'll wear the robe once or twice a year for my career. Probably just go ahead and buy it. And then I found out how much it cost. It was over $600. This is like the year 2000. $600. It is by far the most expensive article of clothing I own. Nothing else even comes close. My next expensive thing is a suit. There's two pieces to that. I mean, this is just one. And whew. So I swallowed hard and I purchased it. And then my first professorship was at Tulane University in New Orleans. And we held our commencement in the Superdome, like the largest building in North America. It was, kind of this great, event. And the first year I was there, I was just kind of overwhelmed with the pageantry. It was just amazing. Second year, it was exactly the same. I mean, the songs everything was exactly the same. I knew exactly what was happening. The only thing that was different was the commencement speaker. By the way, who do we get for commencement speakers out here at BYU? Like prophets and apostles and such. Who did we have? Like Ellen DeGeneres was our commencement speaker that second year at Tulane. So after Ellen was done, a different culture, believe me. After Ellen was done speaking, I went, oh, this is all exactly the same as it was before. And my mind starts to wander. So before the days of cell phones, people had cell phones, definitely before the days of smartphones. So what do? What does this former accounting major do to occupy his mind? Well, I'm here sitting in the robe. And I built an amortization table in my head for the robe. And after doing some calculations, I realized it cost me $37.50 every time I put the robe on. And that was when I probably should have thought better about the make versus buy decision, because it was cheaper to rent every time than it was to buy the whole thing. And then I had another epiphany. The epiphany was, if I wore it twice as often, it would cost half as much. And I thought, where else could I wear the robe? And so I started wearing it on the first day of class, or at the first day of class. People look at you weird on the first day of class when you're wearing the robe, because they think it's a graduation robe. By the way, it's not a graduation robe. It's an academic robe. It used to be that all professors wore the robe all the time. This is what you wore as a professor. These are a little nicer than the ones you wore for everyday use. In fact, even in this country until about the 1940s, if you went to a university, your professors were wearing the robe around campus, just what they wore. 1940s, like World War II, and the professorate in this country kind of said, "How come we wear the robe? They're expensive, they kind of itch, you got to dry clean them. There are more important things happening in the world. And what would happen if we quit wearing the robe?" Kind of one by one, they just quit, and they still had jobs. It was amazing. And that's when we got out of wearing the robe. So anyway, so then I was at Tulane until Hurricane Katrina, and my house got flooded in Hurricane Katrina. And my wife said, "Hey, listen, we got to get out of here." I said, "Great." And at the time, position opened up here, and I thought this is the one place I'd love to go. So I was thrilled to get the job here, but then I faced the decision: should I wear the robe when I got here? And so I thought, what the heck, I'm going to wear it now. This is before we had the addition built onto the Tanner building. And so we had a lot of classes that were held kind of other places on campus. And as the new guy on campus, I was walking the furthest to where these classes were. And so I'm walking across campus with the robe, and people are giving me the look and everything. And they think, wow, this guy is clueless. He thinks graduation already, and it's the first day of the semester. And they start thinking we got to find a way to get rid of tenure and whatever. And so I went first day of class, taught in the robe. Second day of class, I showed up in like regular suit. I was there a few minutes before class, and there's a guy sitting in the front row. And that was before class, and he said, "Hey, Professor Allen, where's the robe?" And I said, "I was just going to wear it the first day." And he said, "Oh, I liked the robe." I said, "Really?" I said, I like the robe too. And that day, I like polled the class. How many think I should wear the robe every day? It was unanimous. You should wear the robe every day. I have worn this robe every day that I've taught ever since then. And I'm glad to tell you, I'm now down below 60 cents per donning. So that's a little applause there, I think. So, oh, I got a picture of Hugh Nibley up here. I guess we won't play the video, but in the early 1960s, Hugh Nibley gave up. Have you heard this? He gave a prayer at commencement, and in the prayer, he apologizes. You know, dear Lord, we come before thee we thy humble servants come before thee this morning. We apologize for coming before you adorned in the robes of the false priesthood. And then he goes on and gives his prayer. And after the prayer, people, what did he? And anyway, apparently, he then he's the commencement speaker now in 1983. And he says, he told that story. And he said, you know, in the years since then, many people have asked if I really said that, but no one had asked me what I meant by it. And he kind of talks about it. And, apparently, the origin of academic robes was like apostate temple robes. I mean, they kind of draw a line back to the temple ceremony there. So why he calls it the apostate of the false priesthood. So I always feel a little bit like a rebel wearing the robes of the false priesthood here. Okay, so we got. Oh no, I wasn't going to play that because I think we'll have problems with the sound. I think that's the end of that. Okay, so let's take a look then at getting ourselves kind of set up with the needful things. Let's do a little review of the syllabus real quick. There is a syllabus quiz. So you've got an assignment in Learning Suite, which is, you know, go take this quiz, this syllabus quiz, and just to make sure you've gotten through. So we're not going to go over everything. There are a few things I do want to make sure that we've talked about here. Course information, description, prerequisites, learning outcomes, teaching for, here we go, homework and projects. Okay, so there are going to be three things that I grade you on in this course. There's going to be a midterm and a final exam. We'll talk more about those as we get closer to them. But that is work that you're going to do entirely by yourself. We then kind of a step down from that, we have, well, let's start with the other end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is homework. So homework, and there'll be 10 homework assignments in class. Homework assignments are meant to help you engage the material before we talk about it in class. And so there'll be chapters that are laid out in the schedule that say, you know, here's the chapters that we're doing. Do I expect you to read those word for word? No, not really. But I think it's probably helpful to go through. Those folks, by the way, those of you who will read the textbook you'll get this better. It's really a helpful exercise to do that. I just don't expect you to do it. And it's probably because I hated reading textbooks when I was a student. They were accounting textbooks, to be fair. But I remember one day I was, you know, at my apartment, I was reading my accounting textbook. I fell asleep, drooled on the page and whatever, woke up a little bit later, and it was like, oh, I've been asleep for like 20 minutes. I slept right through those pages, and that was unfortunate. And I kind of kept reading from a little further down the way. It was my policy of sleep reading. I don't recommend it. It wasn't very effective. So do I expect you to read the book? No, I don't. I hope that you will, but it won't be part of what I'm assuming you've done by the time you come to class. But to help you engage that material, I'm asking you to do homework that you've gotten started on at least, and maybe completed, having looked through the chapter and done the homework project. The homework projects are meant to take a short amount of time. Some will take you like 5 minutes. Some might take you as much as a half hour or longer. But the idea is that you're engaging the material before we talk about it in class. Now, I'm going to make those homework assignments always due at the end of the day where we introduce the material. So for those of you who are like, you know what, I just kind of want to hear about it first and then do the homework, that will be okay. You won't get as much out of the lecture if you haven't engaged the material by at least trying the homework before you came to lecture, okay? Now, for these homework problems, I allow you to work in groups of 2 or 3. Probably you shouldn't do more than 2 or 3, although I wouldn't know if you're working in groups of more than 2 or 3. And in this case, for homework, you are allowed to share everything with that group. In other words, the group could work together to come up with the solution to the homework problem, as long as your own fingers are putting it in for you. So, and by that, I don't mean your fingers copy and paste. I mean, you're doing the whole thing yourself. So for homework, it's like totally get together, think through it. And the whole point is I'm trying to get you to engage the material before we've talked about it. You're not proving to me that you can do this. You're engaging the material so that you're ready to talk about it. Does that make sense? So you're not proving to me your prowess with VBA. You're just engaging the material. So that's homework. Projects are different. Projects are kind of like partway between the exam where it's all yourself and the homework where I'm glad to have you totally collaborate. So project, this is where you show me that you have learned what we've covered in class. There will be 6 projects throughout the term. And they will take you more time, substantially more time than the homework will. Now, so I want you to think about the project as being an individual endeavor, but you're not all on your own. So for projects, I'm glad to have you talk to me, to the TAs. We have a couple of TAs. I'm glad to have you talk to your fellow students for the project, but there's a difference on the project. There's a line I'm going to ask you to adhere to on the project. For the project, under no circumstances will you share code with each other. So you'll talk about concepts, even like the approach about how you're going to do it, but in terms of the actual implementation, that's going to be all you. Does that make sense? So no sharing of code, but you can kind of talk and help each other with the projects as well. So how do you feel about that? Kind of those 3 different things? Homework, work together all the way. Exams, totally by yourself. Projects kind of in the middle, but mostly an individual endeavor. Okay, any questions there? By the way, on the grading of these for your exams, you got one submission, that's it. For projects and homework, you can make as many submissions as you want, but your grade will be determined as the highest of your first 2 submissions. We have known for decades, maybe close to 100 years now in like theory of learning, that one of the best things that we can do to improve learning is to shorten the feedback cycle. Have you been in the class where you take the assessment and you get your feedback like 3 weeks later? And it's like, I don't even remember what that thing was about. And you like go back and dive into it and try to, figure out what you did or could have done better. No, of course you don't. You've moved on by that point. So the whole point here is to be able to say, you hit submit, and within 30 seconds, you've got a detailed report that says what's wrong with you. I'm not going to give you the answer, but I'm going to tell you, what my grader found deficient in your solution. And there'll be a compelling reason for you to say, oh, I'm going to look at this, understand this feedback, and go correct what I had done. Because that's really the learning, right? If we can shorten that feedback cycle, get you to actually engage the feedback and make another attempt at it, that's where it's going to be strong. So, so that's great news. You'll be able to get 2 attempts at everything. Now, I just want you to say this with me. Although, it'll be almost like swearing you in. Are you ready? See if I can say this shortly. Although I can submit any assignment as many times as I want, say it. That's really great. My grade will be the highest of my first 2 submissions. Sounds like chanting. I love that. Medieval education here or something. Okay, thank you. So that's for homework and projects. You'll get both of those. List of assignments, there's a bunch of university policies. They actually come in automatically. I don't think I've ever read them. But plagiarism one, look, do your homework and so forth. Okay. So that's what I wanted to cover on the syllabus. Questions? Yes.
So I'm an undergrad student, and I think this is like grad level.
This is a graduate level class.
It's like you're able to take it as part of the stats undergrad.
Yes.
But the prereqs for this class are IS.
Let me stop you right there. This is a question about prereqs. As long as you are comfortable with Excel, you're going to be just fine in this class. I assume no prior programming experience. And this is really an introduction to programming class. I'm going to be teaching you the programming language built into Excel. Did that answer the question? If not, continue the question.
It's an intro to programming class focused on Excel.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Introduction to programming. So I know a bunch of you have like substantial programming experience, but I'm assuming that you don't even know what a variable is. So like next time we get together, we'll be talking about variables. And some of you might be like, oh my gosh, do I really have to stay around for this? The answer is no, you don't really have to stay. We'll talk about attendance here in just a minute. But realize that this is the class, we built the class actually for MBA students who had never programmed before. That was how we designed this class. So because it's a graduate level class, it might feel a little more challenging. It might not, I don't know. Some people take to it quite well. Okay. Yeah, that's why it's offered at the 500 level so that undergraduates can register for it as well. Yes.
If there are like issues with the autograder, like are those things that we could potentially petition?
Oh, that's excellent. Excellent question. So right, so this grading is going to happen automatically. It turns out the auto grader is really good at giving you a grade when you've done it perfect. If you haven't done it perfect, sometimes you can make a small mistake that like everything the auto grader looks at, because of that small mistake, it's like you got that wrong, you got this wrong, you got this wrong, you got this wrong. That's a really small mistake. Now, if you make a small mistake, something that can be changed really easily, they give you full credit. Should you get full credit? No, but you should get close to full credit. I mean, we were pretty close. And the grader isn't really good at making those kinds of distinctions. Sometimes, I mean, a lot of times the score the grader comes with like, yeah, that's about right. But this can be the case. So here's what you're going to do. The grading will actually happen inside of Excel. So you've done your thing there in Excel. You'll say grade. You'll get the grade. It'll post it to My Educator. Now, if you don't like the grade, or if you think, the grader abused, I've been abused by the grader, what are you going to do? Well, the class is administered in Learning Suite. So normally, when it says, do this assignment, you just go do it in My Educator and we'll import the scores back. But if you're saying, I'd like to have a TA review my work because I think I deserve more than the grader got me, then you'll upload your Excel file to the Learning Suite assignment. And then when a workbook shows up in there that has less than full credit, then the TA that will be the signal to the TA to take a look at it and then review it. Okay. So yeah, there's always a way to appeal that. Question here.
I know there are always multiple ways to get the desired answer outcome. In this class, is it more focused on we learned this way to do it, you have to do it in this way, or is it if you get the correct answer at the end, then you feel good?
That's a great question. He spoke up pretty well, but I'm going to repeat it. So there's kind of three things I want to address with that. So first of all do we have to do it the way you taught us, or is some other way going to be acceptable? And should we be working to figure out the most efficient way to do it? You didn't ask that question, but it's kind of in this same space. And the answer is, as long as your code produces the correct answer, I'm happy. So whether you did it the way I told you to do it, or you did it in a really, really inefficient way. By the way, what does really, really inefficient mean? I mean, it means it made your processor work harder, and it took 35 seconds instead of 3.5 seconds. But you know what? You just automated a process that normally would have taken 3.5 hours. And so do I care about that difference in 35 seconds? I don't. And in a business context, generally that's the case. Now, if this is a computer science class where we're trying to get efficiency and everything, we're looking for effectiveness here. Efficiency is great if you can get it, but that's not the heart of what this class is. Okay. Other questions? Excellent. All right. What else do we have to do here? Okay. So day one, course textbook, we got that textbook table of contents. This is really just a link that it's mostly for me so I can get straight to the course textbook myself. So once you've purchased the book, right, it'll appear in your list here, but my list, apparently now my list of books is so long, it won't even load. So this link is so that I can get to the course textbook, but you can use that too. Files and videos for this course. So I'm going to go ahead and follow this link here. So as I said, I'm going to record every class. I'm recording this lecture now, and I will post it here. This is just a blog. It's vbacourse.blogspot.com. And so like this fall begins. So here's our course for today. There's no files needed here. The class hasn't been uploaded. Once it's uploaded, the video will show here. You'll be able to go back here and review it. I decided to kind of put all the materials out here finally because I was using YouTube to post the videos, and I was getting people asking all kinds of questions on YouTube. Hey, where do I get that file to kind of follow along with this great video that you have? And it was like, that's a lot of work to answer those questions. So I just ignored them, which I don't know. Anyway, I thought if I just organized the class, so all the information was out here. So if we look about later in the course, there'll be, here's a file that we're going to download to start with. So that'll all be right here. So now when I post the video, I just also put a link to this page so that folks can, who stumble across the videos, can get the rest of the information. So this is kind of all the stuff that we're doing in class, but guess what? Here's the stuff we did in the winter term. It's almost the same. I made a little bit of changes here. Here's from last fall. So, you know, if you feel like, man, I really would love to work ahead. I'm going out on a recruiting trip and I'm going to miss a couple of classes. I'd like to get this assignment done before I leave. You know, if the topic is the same listed here as it was like last semester, there's a video out there you could kind of go watch and work ahead. So this will be important for you because this is where you're going to come to get the videos from class. Questions there? All right, let's talk about how we're going to get help. We have 2 TAs, neither of whom can attend class. So they're both in classes at the same. That's okay. Most of the stuff we do in class, there's only a couple of days where I feel like would have been great if we would have had a TA here to kind of help with the issues that you'll have as we're trying to get connected to an external database or to a website or something. So, but here's how you're going to get help. So you'll follow that link and this will bring you again to a blog. I love blogs. Why? Because they're free. And I'm a really cheap guy and free is great. So I set this up as a blog as well. So if you follow that link, this will come and it'll show you the TA schedule. So the TAs are going to hold office hours. And so it looks like Lauren is like held her office hours earlier today. I think I probably paid her for her office hours today, even though there was nothing she could have possibly done for it. All right, Lauren, we'll talk about that. But it looks like Lauren is at noon on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and then 6:30 over here. So, and they'll keep these then updated. Now, there'll be times when the TA has to cancel their office hours, but my expectation for them is that they will not do that within 24 hours of the time, the scheduled time. So if they're going to change their office hours, they're going to change it with at least a day's notice for you. So what this means is that, you know, it's like kind of during this 12 p.m. time. I wonder if that says how long she is. Yeah, 12 to 2. So she's done now, but oh, it looks like she still has herself marked as on duty. So down here, this is the queue. This will show you how many people have like a request in the queue ahead. We had to write this so we could do this stuff during COVID, but it worked so well. It was like way better than having people come in and do in person. So kind of wherever you're working on this, you can go ahead and submit a request. So right now there's nobody waiting. So that means that you can come down here and you can kind of fill this out and put your net ID in here. That's what's going to authorize you to make a request here. So by supplying your net ID, we're going to look up and see if you're registered for this class. If so, then the request will go through and you're going to say, wow, this is about homework for doing a web query and a little description of what your issue is. That's going to be, that's visible. That will show up in the queue so that like the TA might go, oh, there's a couple of people working on this kind of same thing. I'm going to go ahead and get them together to address the issue. And then you're going to provide a Zoom link because you're not going to join the TA's session. This TA is going to join your session. So you go up in the Zoom meeting, you'll give the link here. And then when that TA gets to you on the list, then they'll just join in. And then if you want to give them something else here that's not publicly visible, such as, listen, I might have to step away with my computer, just text me and I'll be able to run right back, you know, so I know that you're there. You put the phone number there or whatever. You'll hit submit and then that will go into the queue. And if the TA is on duty, they should be watching that. If they're on call, and I tend to leave myself on call, then I will get a text message that you just asked for help. So the truth is, I really want to help you succeed in this class. And almost any time, if there's not a TA available, and I get that text message that someone needs help, I'll try to jump on. So anyway, just realize, oh, the other thing you should realize is that when I go to bed, usually about 9 o'clock p.m., my phone is not anywhere where I could hear it. So don't feel bad about putting it in because you won't wake me up, but I won't know that you texted until the next morning when I wake up at about 4 o'clock to kind of get going on the day. I probably won't check to see if you're still on for like 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock the next morning. But so that's how we're going to handle like getting help in this class, either from me or from the TAs. By the way, my office is office number 613. It's probably somewhere in Learning Suite. And I'm always glad to have you drop by my office too. I am almost always in my office if I'm not teaching. The only classes I teach are this class, and then I teach in our IS junior core, which is like practically all day Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can probably catch me in my office. I'm always glad to have you stop by. When you stop by to ask me a question, chances are what you're asking is going to be way more interesting than what I'm already working on. So I'll be thrilled to have you come and help. I'm also the academic scheduler for the Marriott School, which means when I got to figure out which class meets in every room. And that's really a mind-numbing task. So if I had to be working on scheduling when you come by, it's like, thank goodness, a VBA question, something I know the answer to. So, okay. So that's getting help. Questions there? Now, I really want to facilitate you working with each other. And so I'm going to let you kind of have discussions over Slack. Feel free to reach out to TAs on Slack if no one's, kind of on call or no one's answering questions on the queue at the time. The TAs, although I leave myself on call, I might be able to hop in outside of TA hours. Feel free, the TAs won't. I'm not expecting the TAs to jump in and answer questions whenever you ask them, although I might do that. So the other place that you have to kind of ask for help is Slack. So there's an invitation to join a Slack workspace that's just for this class. And so you can ask your fellow students questions. Remember, probably shouldn't be sharing code on Slack, even for homework. Like, don't post the solution like to a homework problem, right? Because the whole idea is that by the way, would that be cheating to like copy a homework solution, even if you typed it in yourself that you weren't involved in making? That would be academic dishonest, right? And it's okay for you to work together and come up with a common solution as long as you enter it, but not okay just to take someone else's solution and enter it yourself. So don't post code on Slack, solution code. I guess if you have, anyway, if it's homework and you have kind of a question about your code, you can post bad code on Slack, I guess, but don't post like the answer. I don't know, but you tend not to share code on Slack anyway, but definitely don't share code on Slack for projects. That'd be bad. Okay. Getting set up for assignments. Okay, so now you're going to need, so here's a little video, 9-minute video that's going to show you what you have to do to get set up for assignments. So it turns out to be able to do the grading here, to have the VBA automatically graded, I'm going to have you install an add-in. You've used add-ins, right? You've used the solver add-in, you've used the data analysis toolkit, those are add-ins. And there's also an add-in to be able to do the grading for this class. And so that's what that link is here, Atlas VBA 1_5. So download and install that add-in, but the video there will kind of take you through the whole process. There's some things you have to do. So kind of a recent thing, maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, is that if you download something, I'll just go ahead and download this now and we'll take a look at it. If you download a file from the internet, let's say show in folder here, maybe you know this by now, but it was surprised to me when it first happened. So I've just downloaded this. I'm going to right click this and choose properties. There's a relatively new property over here called unblock. And when you download a file from the internet, it blocks it. It says, you know what, we're going to flag this as something that was downloaded from the internet. And for most of the files in this class that you download from the internet, they've got VBA built into them. If it's not unblocked, Excel is, when you open it, Excel is going to go, I don't think so. You don't even know what this file is. You just download it from the internet. And they don't even tell you how to unblock it. It's just like, sorry, we're not going to do it. It's untrusted. But this is what you have to do then, is you're going to say, I'm going to right click this. I'm going to choose properties and I'm going to choose unblock. How many of you were like, I totally would have known how to do that before you told me that, Professor Allen? So there's only a few of you that have been through that. And it's because a lot of things downloaded from the internet, it's like, this is not going to hurt you. If it says .xlsm on the end, it could really hurt you. And so that's why Excel is going to say no until you unblock. Okay. So, and the video kind of takes you through that. So don't just think, I know how to install add-ins, I'll just do it and we can figure it out. You probably should go through that video while you're going through the setup process. Questions? Okay, we've made it to the last administrative thing, attendance. So I'm going to take attendance in class. It will be for extra credit. So if you have exemplary attendance, meaning you have come to every class missing no more than 4 classes in the semester, then you will get 20 points of extra credit. That would be the equivalent of 2 homework assignments, kind of just piled on top wherever you are. If you missed more than 4, but you didn't miss more than 5 or 6, you'll get 10 points extra credit. If you miss more than 6 classes, no extra credit is available to you. So the way that we're gonna take attendance is you'll follow this link every day, and I will give you a quote. We'll give you some kind of a quote, and you will put your net ID here. You will say who the author of the quote is. You'll type in the year of the quote, and you'll submit. And so it's the same link every day. So this just goes into a Google form, and then I get your net ID, enough information to know that you were here for the quote. It's going to be time sensitive, so it's got to happen after class starts, because I know I'm not going to put it before class, but it's not going to go for like the whole class. So if you show up with like 3 minutes to go, should you get credit for being in class that day? No. What if you show up like 5 minutes into class and I've already covered attendance? Should you get credit for being there? I think you should. But what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to like interrupt me in class and say, Professor Allen, what was the quote? So hopefully you've got a buddy here that was here. What would you do, Josh, if, oh no, I forgot your name. What would you do, Josh, if Nate came in 5 minutes late, he missed attendance, and he leaned over to you and said, Josh, what was the year and the author of the quote? What would you do? That's right. You would say it was Thomas Jefferson, 1776. And you would type it in, he'd get credit for being here. Now, if it was like 5 minutes before the end of class, you shouldn't do that. Am I going to police that? No, not really. But the whole point is here, it's okay to share that information if you feel like the person's been here for most of the class. Right? Okay, so let's just go ahead and practice. I'm going to use those quotes then at the very beginning here to help us with something that's like near and dear to my heart, and what I have come to realize is part of my mission in life. And that's to help you understand a little bit about what it was that was so amazing about the American founding. And so it's kind of amazing to me that we went to war with Great Britain in 1775. And a big reason that we went to war is that we couldn't understand why those people in England were being so unreasonable. And you know what? They couldn't understand why we were being so unreasonable. And why was it that we both had this opinion of each other is because the cultures were totally different. I mean, totally is probably too strong a word, but they were really fundamentally different. Even though most of the folks that had been here had only been away from Europe for 1 or 2 generations, maybe 3 or 4 at the longest, we really had a different culture, at least along 7 dimensions. There were 7 values that made Americans really different from Europeans. Of those 7, there's only 2 today that we still unite around as part of our national identity. But I'm going to use this kind of quotes at the beginning of class. It'll take 3 or 4 minutes to explain the quote, to kind of help us engage that. And one of the things that made us really different was the way that we felt about this idea of divine providence. Part of what it meant to be an American in the 1770s, by the 1770s, was to have a really close connection to divine providence. It is not a term that we use in our national discussion anymore. When we ask educated people today, what does divine providence mean? They kind of look at the word and they go, divine, something to do with God, and they're right, it's something to do with God, but it's a belief in a providential God. It's a God who has a plan, a God who is concerned with the affairs of nations and intervenes in the lives of men, in the lives of people. And so today, we don't feel that's part of our national identity. We really do believe today that a person could be an atheist and be a perfectly good American. We don't think there's any kind of religious test for citizenship, and I think that's right. But when we all when Americans have a deep and abiding belief in divine providence, America's a better place. And in fact, when you understand divine providence and embrace divine providence, then you start asking the questions I posed to you earlier. What is it that God wants you to do? What is your point in bringing about God's work, or what is your mission in bringing about God's work? It's kind of part of really understanding what divine providence is. What responsibility do you have to God while you're here on the earth? And so this founding value actually shows up in our founding document. Most people today are familiar with exactly 3 sentences of the Declaration of Independence. The very first one, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people. We'll read that quote to someone, say, where is it from? And they will say, it's from the Constitution. And we'll give them credit for that. It's a founding document. So they got the wrong one, but they're familiar with the first verse of the second paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And they'll get that one, declaration. and they're familiar with the last half of the last sentence. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's because they saw that on National Treasure. But this idea of divine providence appears in the first half of that last sentence. So we just had the declaration where the poet says that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. That's the Declaration of Independence. It's towards the end of the document. And then it says, and this is the last sentence, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That they're saying is we are now establishing ourselves as a new nation, that we, the ones who are actually making this declaration, we're doing it with this reliance on divine providence. It was kind of fundamental to who we were as Americans. By the way, the two that we still hold as part of our national identity, can you guess what they were? Can you just take a guess? What might be like the value that we say, yeah, that's part of what, I mean, if you're a good American, it means you believe this. Freedom is right, liberty, and that's the one that was probably central. The whole reason that we got feeling so differently about freedom than like almost everyone else in the world by the 1770s is kind of a fascinating thing. We won't talk about it today. Maybe we'll talk about it some other time. That's one. And the other one, if you think Pledge of Allegiance, you'll get the other one. If you think kind of the last of the Pledge of Allegiance, do you remember it like from grade school? Yeah, I heard it. Say it louder. Justice, yeah. So we felt really different about justice than they did in Europe. And to this day, we still see, I'm not sure we feel so different about it, but to this day, we feel it's part of our national identity. That if you know, when we hear about someone doing something that's clearly unjust in the name of America, we go, that's just wrong. Like when we hear about, especially when anyone like in official capacity does it. Like when you hear about prisoners being held in a prison in Cuba, like by Americans, a prison we couldn't even build in America without the prospect of a trial, we say that's unjust and it's wrong, it's un-American to do that. We may not know what the solution is they were trying to accomplish when they did that, but we went, you know what, that's just wrong. And we have kind of a national response. Okay, so that's, so by the way, that was attendance for today.
Who was that?
So, yeah, say it. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. So Thomas Jefferson and the year 1776. So net ID, Thomas Jefferson, pick it from the list. They used to have you type it in, but you know what? That was too hard because a lot of you don't know how to spell Jefferson. And a lot of you don't know how to spell Thomas, apparently. So we pick that from the list, put the quote in. What's going to happen if you put your net ID in wrong? I'll fix it. Like I will go and look and say, oh, wow, you know, we're kind of halfway through the semester and here's a net ID that the person's only answered once. And there's another one that's almost exactly the same. They've answered a bunch of other times. I'll go, oh, it is mistyped and I'll correct it. So not the end of the world. If you made a little typo in there, it's be okay. All right. Oh, I think we finally made it. Okay, we still got a little time for class. Yeah. You have to report attendance during class. Yeah, and it's got to be, I think the algorithm, you might not be surprised to find out that it's actually a VBA program that will connect onto the Google Sheet, download the data, do the analysis, and give me the file that I have to upload to Learning Suite. And it will only give you credit if it's in a certain window. I forget what the window is, but it's probably like the first half or a little more than half of class. So yeah. So it would be the wrong thing to say, oh, I got to find out what it was, but I don't want to interrupt somebody during class. I'll wait till after class to get it. You won't get credit because you've got to give it. It says there's a time window where you've got to show that you were here. All right. So we do have some content to cover today. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to open up Excel. Do you want to save it? I do want to save. And I've got Excel open here with a blank workbook. Now, to be able to do what we're going to do in Excel, and we will do wizardry with Excel. And what we're going to do with VBA, it's the kind of thing that will make like your supervisor will go, I had no idea that was even possible in Excel. Okay, maybe just a quick couple of stories. No, maybe not. So so how many of you are going into a profession where you think I'm going to be using Excel a lot? Yeah, that's probably why you're here. And so I know of no other way to get like more kind of instant credibility wherever you're going than to like do something in Excel that everyone else around you who's been there for years goes, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And in fact, many of the women here in this class, you're probably going to be going into male-dominated areas. And like when you do something in Excel that all the men are like, hey, could you show me how to do that? That's like instant credibility. So that should be really great. So that's what we're going to do. But as it turns out, like out of the box, part of the reason that folks don't even know about this is that you can't do this with the way Excel comes out of the box, right? Do you have a developer tab showing? I don't have a developer tab showing. You got to have the developer tab to be able to do. What, did you get some kind of deficient version of Excel? No. It turns out that there was so much raw power available with VBA that in Excel, they're like, we're not even going to let you know that it's there unless you can figure out how to turn on the developer tab. And if you can't figure out how to turn on the developer tab, you don't have a ticket to come to the show, right? I mean, that's it. Because you're in luck. I mean, it's part of this class. At no extra charge, I'm going to show you how to turn on the developer tab. It's like the first thing we got to do. So here's what you're going to do. By the way, how many of you already have the developer tab showing because you've done it, from somewhere else? So it looks like almost half of us, or maybe more than half. So for those of you who haven't, we're going to choose File, Options. Now, if you're on the Mac, it's going to be Excel Preferences. And then we're going to come over here to where it says Customize Ribbon. And I think, again, on Mac, there's just going to be a little option for Customize Ribbon. It's not laid out the same, but there's an icon for it. And then right over here, here's all the tabs. Here's Developer. Turn on, just check it there and say, OK. And now you'll have the Developer tab. I've always thought it's amazing that you could like turn off the Home tab. In case that Home tab ever gets pesky and you think that thing's always in the way, I don't ever use it, you could just take it off. Or if your roommate like walks away from his Excel and you're thinking, what would he do if he didn't have a Home tab? Probably shouldn't do that. That would be a sin. You'd have to repent for that. But I do encourage repentance, so I don't know. So, all right. So now we've got the developer tab. So with the developer tab, then we've got access to everything we need to do with VBA. Okay. And so one of the things that's fantastic about Excel is, and it's unlike any other programming environment, is that if you're thinking, wow, there's something I know how to do in Excel, I'd like to know how to automate that. Well, you've got the thing called the macro recorder, right? You turn on the recorder, you record yourself doing something, and it will write the code to do that. No other environment does that. It's not like you open up JavaScript and say, you know what, I'd like to just do something here in JavaScript and have it write the JavaScript for me. No. What are you going to do? How do you learn something on JavaScript? Like Google it. And in fact, if you're information systems majors, any of you here, there's just a few of you here in class. You're going to be at a disadvantage here because you're already pretty experienced with programming and you're going to think you know how to find something out. So when you try to do something that you don't know how to do, what are you going to do? You're going to Google it. That will come so naturally to you that that's what you'll do. And after an hour or so of trying to find the answer, you're going to remember, oh yeah, I can record myself doing it. How do you make a chart? Record yourself making a chart and look at the code. It will show you the code to make a chart. So, so that's fantastic. But we are not going to do that today. That's coming up, not next time, but the time after. So we'll talk about working with the macro recorder. I just want to get you kind of familiar with the basics of the language. And so let's just go ahead and open up the Visual Basic editor. So to do that, I'm on the Developer tab. And I'm going to choose the very first button over here, Visual Basic. It's not really Visual Basic. The name for the language is too long to fit on the thing here. The name for the language is Visual Basic for Applications. So Visual Basic was a language that Microsoft doesn't make anymore, but it was a language for writing full-blown computer applications. Like you could write a program like Excel using Visual Basic. Visual Basic for Applications was same syntax, so same structure of the language, but it has to have a host application to run. So whatever program we write in Visual Basic for Applications here in Excel, we're going to have Excel for that to run. So we'll run that inside of Excel. So that's the difference here. So I'm going to go ahead and click open Visual Basic. It's really the Visual Basic for Applications editor. And that will bring this up. It is, yeah, in fact, one time a student opened that up and it was like, oh my gosh, thought Excel had just changed to look something different than it ever looked before. It's a different window. Your Excel is still safe, however it was before. And so we've got this structure here. So let's do this. I am going to, we got to have some place to put the code that we're going to write. And the only place that Visual Basic code can be put that it gets saved in the workbook is in something called a module. Now, it turns out there's a couple of modules here already because there's a module that's built for every worksheet and there's a module for the whole workbook itself. Those are special modules that let us do things like saying, you know what, like every time someone selects cell B22 on this, just the fact of selecting that cell, we would like that to fire off and run some code. That's what these are for. So these modules that are here already, those are here to allow us to respond to happenings in the workbook. That's a little more advanced. We're going to start with the simpler stuff, but there's no place by default to put this code. So we're going to have to insert it. So step one for almost everything we do in this class is going to be, all right, I've got a blank workbook. I'm going to insert a module. Good news. It's really easy. Insert tab and module choice. Insert module. You're going to insert a module. There's a choice for insert module. That's great. So we'll insert a module. You'll see it now. It says, oh, you've got a module in here, and it's called module 1. If you want to change the name of it, you could here. I don't know why you would, but you could say, you know, this is mod MOD day 1 or something. Mod objects. Talking about objects. And you can have lots of different modules. And so some of these applications that are like, you know, doing all kinds of different things. We've got one module that we put all the, it's just really just for organizing the code. I've got one module that keeps all the code that's using to access the corporate database. I've got another module that we use to interact with the corporate intranet or something. I've got another one that's actually doing the loan, how do we approve loan applications and such. So we might use the different modules to organize your code differently. But when you've got code in one module, it can run code that's in another, it can refer to code in other modules and so forth. So you really want to start naming your modules if you've got several of them. Almost everything we're going to do is just going to be one module that we're working in. And so feel free to name the module if you want to, but it's probably not necessary. And it's just kind of a blank thing right here. Listen, I'm going to make a couple of changes here. How many of you, when you opened up that module, it says option explicit here? Any of you have it actually say option explicit? So that's an option. We're going to talk about that next time we get together. But I want to have you make the setting with me so that it says that when you make a new module. So I'm going to come to tools here in the Visual Basic Editor, tools, options. And we're going to change two of the default options that will make your life better. And they're the first two right here. We're just going to reverse these first two. The first one is auto syntax check. We're going to turn that off. Auto syntax check, what auto syntax check does is when you write a line, if there's an error in it, it will pop up a dialog box. It will say that there's an error here. Would you like some help? If you click on that help button, it will take you to a page on Microsoft. It's like guaranteed not to help you. But the fact that it pops open that dialog box is extremely annoying. Now, if we turn off auto syntax check, it'll still check the syntax. And if there's an error, it'll show in red. That's great. But you can leave that on if you want, but most students find it to be quite annoying because what will happen is you'll type half of a line and go, I'm not quite sure how to finish this line. I'm going to go copy it from where I wrote it up before. And then you'll leave that line. It'll say, oh boy, you made a mistake. You'll have to say, I'm trying to close you, but I hit help instead. And it opens a browser and anyway. But then this is the other one, require variable declaration. We'll talk about what that means next time we get together. But now if I were to, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this one. You don't have to do this for what we're doing today. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to remove that. I don't want to export it. I'm going to insert a module again. Now that I've said require variable declaration, it's going to say option explicit for me right here. And we'll talk about what that means and why you want to have that at the top of all of your modules next time we get together. I'm going to also come in here and just change the font so that you guys can see it a little bit better. I'm going to come to Microsoft Sans Serif Western. Oh, come back. Sans Serif Western. Maybe like 18 points. Can you guys see that okay? Should I go bigger? We okay in the back? All right. So now, oh boy, we got 4 minutes to introduce you to something called objects and properties. So let's do this. I'm going to type here sub objects. Objects. Okay, so whenever we write a block of VBA code, it's going to be in what's called a sub procedure. Starts with sub, ends with end sub, and has a name that we're going to use to refer to this. Whenever I want to invoke this code, that's the name that will let me refer to it. Okay, so that's just kind of the structure that we have to have here. And now I'm going to come here and I'm going to refer to something. So the thing that I want to drive home in these next couple of minutes to get us started is that VBA is an object-based language, which means almost everything we do is going to deal with objects. Objects is object-oriented programming. So this is argument about whether it's object-oriented or object-based, but we're going to be dealing with objects for sure. Objects, I'm going to give you the definition of an object. Don't take notes on this. You don't need notes for this. You're going to understand it here in just a minute. You ready? An object is a thing. That's it. Object is a thing. Specifically, it's anything that I can manipulate with VBA. So if it's something that I can like change or tell it to do something, that's what an object is. Like, so what do you think? You think a worksheet is an object? Yeah. How about a cell? Yeah. How about a workbook? Yeah. How about a chart? Yeah. How about like an axis of a chart? Yeah. How about the label on an axis of a chart? Yeah. How about the color? Not the color. How about the font of the label of an axis of a chart on a sheet in a workbook? Yeah. So if we can manipulate it, it's an object. And so the way that we do things is we're going to always refer to an object by doing some way to identify the object I'm interested in. Here's an easy one. Active, ACTIVE, cell. So this refers to an object. Which object is it referring to? Whatever cell happens to be active at the moment. So when I run that code, this is the active cell is going to be this object right here. If I have a different worksheet open, it'll be that one. There's only one ever in a workbook, there's only one active cell at a time because you can only have one worksheet active and only one active cell on that time. Now, objects have two characteristics that we're going to be really interested in. One is called a method. And so here, one is called a method. And a method is me telling the cell to do something, telling the object to do something. Let me do a different way to refer to a particular cell. I'm going to say range and then A2. Normally we think of a range, again, I'm referring to an object here. Normally we think of that as a cell and a range having multiple cells in it. But in VBA, a range is just any cell or collection kind of group of cells that I can identify with a string. Like I can tell it which range I'm talking about. So that's another reference to an object. I'm going to call a method. A method is an instruction to tell an object to do something. So this range, A2, is a method. It knows how to do some stuff. One of the things it can do is select. So so the select is the method. I am telling this object to make itself the active cell. And so when I run that by clicking the little play button right here, Windows right arrow, that's not doing what I think it should do, but I'll just drop it to the side, you'll see it. So when I run this by clicking on the play button, then that's an instruction. It gave an instruction to this thing to do something. Okay, last thing to introduce to you is a thing called a property. And I'll just, let's do this. I'm going to say range, I'll say active cell, different way to do it, dot value. So the value is a property. A property is something it's something that tells me how the object is. So the value inside that cell is just what shows in the cell. And so now whatever cell I'm active on when I run this, it's going to say this object, call this method, tell that object to do something. And then I'm going to change the property value of this object. It'll be the same object because I select that will become the active one. So this will select A2 and we'll put the value A4 into that cell. So now we can see that it did it. So introduction to our first three ideas, objects are things. Methods are instructions to tell objects to do something. It's something the object knows how to do. And the value is something that describes the way the object is. Thank you for coming. See you next time, which is Wednesday, class dismissed. Go ahead. Not like dinosaurs.
So you're still gonna be. Because, there's just options. I'll just show you.
I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this uploading. The next one comes in here, I can get up.
Sorry, yeah, do you have a second or should I?
No, maybe we'll take the question. You're gonna stop.